and welcome to another review here on my channel. Today we're going to look at Final Fantasy 15. And last time we looked at Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15 because I wanted to review the movie before I reviewed the game. A little bit backstory. Final Fantasy 15 originally were supposed to be Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which were originally supposed to be released on PlayStation 3, but they were delayed multiple times and later decided to redevelop it into Final Fantasy 15. I don't remember or don't really know if they started from scratch or if they used the assets, all the assets from Final Fantasy 13 Versus, but it is essentially they used the storyline or the characters from that game and used it in Final Fantasy 15 instead. So yeah. And if I remember correctly, it had been somewhat 10 years in the making, so is it any good? Let's just start. Final Fantasy 15 is set in the kingdom of Lucis, where you play the characters of Noctis, which is traveling with his friends Gladius, Ignis and Prompto essentially. They are essentially on a road trip in order to get Noctis to his fiancée, Luna Freya of Tenebrae, which essentially is a princess. On the way there, some bad things are happening in the capital of Lucis, which is Insomnia, where Niflheim are essentially taken over and kill the king Regis, which essentially makes Noctis the official king of Lucis. In this game we essentially follow him trying to get into the role of being a king with his friends, which are trying to help him in this journey, essentially where he is trying to get the power of the gods and the former kings of Lucis. And in the background Luna Freya is essentially also help me in the cause, essentially trying to get the favor of the gods in order to help Noctis in his journey, in order to in the end kill the bad guy, which essentially is Darkness. Yes, I can't remember his name, sorry for that. Don't remember his name. Anyway, bad guy you will see throughout the game is at the first time I saw him it was interesting, but I didn't say no. Yeah. And that is essentially the synopsis. For the most part the storyline is interesting and fun to follow, but at the same time when it comes to actually spreading out the storyline it feels a little bit thin at some points. The game is essentially divided into chapters. The first 8 chapters is a little bit thinner at the storyline and gives you, for the most part, just bigger points here and there. But in the final 6 to 7 chapters, the game had 14 chapters in total. The storyline are wrapping up and you're getting more and more intriguing scenes and greater interesting parts essentially to follow, and I really like that about this game. You get time in the first part of the game in order to go around, explore the world, and etc. And then the storyline is actually wrapping up, and I like that about the storyline. But at the same time, it is, as I said, a little bit thin here and there, and they could have been done a little bit more in my opinion. In the game you essentially play Noctis, as I said, and you use several action-oriented moves essentially. Well, the game is an RPG, action RPG it is called, and you use easy button prompts essentially to attack monsters, etc. and demons. You have in your arsenal essentially weapons like swords, guns, etc. And later on we will get powerful weapons from the old kings of Lucis. You also have elemental powers such as electric, fire, and ice. You can combine them in different ways in order to create more powerful powers, and sometimes you can just create easy, fast, and not that powerful powers. And if you... what are you doing? He's the dog, sorry for that. And the gameplay, in my opinion, is a little bit intriguing for the most part, and it is divided into what you can do as well. You can play main story, side missions, and etc. And it is intriguing to just run around and use your powers, etc. on mobs, and they scale in different ways, which makes it sometimes a little bit harder to take down your foes, and sometimes it is a little bit easier, which I find a necessity in such a big game. In the world, you essentially run around. You essentially drive around in a car, which is you can't essentially what is it called, use it in the way you want. It is essentially, for the most part, automatic in how it moves, so it isn't that interesting to use that car, but at the same time it is an easy way to move around in the world because it makes it a lot faster. You can also run around just on your feet, which is taking a lot longer, and you can use chocobos, and you can also fast travel, which I did in the end for the most part. As I said, the gameplay, it is fun to run around and use your powers in order to take home foes that is stronger than you sometimes and sometimes weaker. And the side missions for the most part is intriguing to play, but at the same time it is a little bit more of the same old for the most part in the game, because it is a lot of chain quests and you're doing the same thing. It is not that interesting. Then you have the main story missions, which is a lot more variation in them, and this is of course the main missions, which they take a lot more time to essentially develop, and it is that way. But of course some of the main missions isn't that intriguing and interesting, and if you have heard the bad things about this game, I will warn you about chapter 13. It's not that interesting at all. But for the most part, I really like the gameplay of this game. It is intriguing and a fun open world RPG. The environments for the most part is the open world, which is forests, open fields, deserts, and etc. etc. It isn't that many cities in the world, which is a little bit of a shame. And it is essentially one big hub city, which is somewhat big. It isn't as big as Insomnia is, which you will see sometime in the game and play in, but it is big enough to essentially feel like a capital city. For the most part, you will see environments such as small hubs and small what is it called, gas stations essentially, and motels, which for the most part it isn't interesting because I wanted to see more intriguing cities and etc. because I've heard a lot of interesting parts about Final Fantasy, and I think they made this way because they didn't want to make the games too hard hitting on the consoles, but at the same time I wanted to see more interesting environments. More cities essentially, because you used to get one city and just some small hubs, and essentially then you have the forests, and etc. That is a little bit the same. It's a bit sad in my opinion, but at the same time it has its moments, I will say, when it comes to actually showing great open environments. The middle part of Lucis is just wonderful to look at sometimes, and the world in itself is wonderful to look at, but as I said, I want to see more. The side characters differs a little bit here. You will have a person from the gas station, the hub, small hubs. You have Gladio's sister Iris, you have Cindy, you have her father, you have Luna Freya, you have Kor, which essentially is a god, a Kingsglaive god I think it is, a former Kingsglaive god that's trying to help. And etc. You have small characters here and there that are really interesting and fun to know more about. And I can't say many bad things about them. I really like the side characters here. The only thing I will say is that I wanted to have more emotion when it comes to actually Luna Freya, because she is essentially the fiance of Noctis, which you play, and I wanted more time and more character development for her. But the things you got was good enough, but I wanted more, essentially. So yeah. Now I will just talk about enemies. The enemies differs a lot in this game. As I said, you have a variation in difficulty, of course. You have animals, you have the Niflheim guards, which is essentially our cyborgs for the most part, and you also have a lot of great boss creatures, which are the most intriguing part of this game. The big boss creatures and the big bosses are amazing to look at and just fight against. Those are the reasons you want to play this game. They are wonderful to look at and wonderful to play against. But some bosses, of course, isn't that interesting. You will probably see which ones I talk about. There are one particular boss fight that I feel just felt a little bit lazy and should have been done a lot more with. The main characters of the game, this is Noctis, Gladius, Ignis and Prompto, are the most intriguing part of this game. They have great chemistry, they are great characters, great acted, and they're just wonderful. Can't say anything bad about them, and they're just great characters. That is all, essentially. Final Fantasy 15 is an interesting game that have decent enough environments, which could have been done a lot more with. Essentially, they could have done a lot, giving you more cities essentially and more interesting parts to look at. Even though I feel that the environments are good enough. You have interesting characters that I actually like a lot. The storyline could have been a little bit more intriguing sometimes, because for some parts it just feels like it is dragging a little bit and it's a little bit thin. And yeah, and when it comes to enemies and gameplay, I really like it a lot. But when it comes to the final verdict, it's a fun and interesting game, but at the same time it is dragging down a little bit when it comes to actually storytelling, as I said, and the environments, and some of the gameplay when it comes to side missions being a little bit too much the same. So because of that, the final verdict for Final Fantasy 15 is a 7.8 out of 10. That's all for today, folks. Hope to see you next time.